right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at a health component. We're going to build up the algorithms for taking damage and tracking health and nourishment and various other variables. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. All right, welcome back. So in the last several videos, we worked up this stat and stat component system so that we have some basic stats for our character. And in this video, we're going to start working on a new component called a health component. So what I'm going to do is right click, and here I am in my character blueprints, top level blueprints one. These are blueprints that will apply to all characters and most specifically to our player character base. So I'm going to right click, select blueprint class, and select actor component. And we're just going to call this health component. And we'll open that up. And here we are in the health component. Now, what we want to do is create several variables for this. We don't need a separate struct for this because we just have a few variables and they're just one thing for the whole character. It's not like a long list of stuff like we had with stats. With stats, we could have put them all just as variables in the controller, but that makes it a little inflexible and hard to make different versions of it, maybe for different kinds of characters. But health is going to remain pretty much the same throughout. So let's create this first one, and let's call it health. And actually, I'm going to back up on that a little bit, and I am going to create a health struct here that's going to have just a few things in it, but it's not going to have a lot. We could do it without the struct, but let me take a look at this, my notes. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to forego the struct. I don't see a need for it. It was just, it was something I did in my notes. So what we're going to do is create a variable here called health. Called health. And we're going to make that a floating point number. And the next variable is going to be called nourishment. So this is how much food we've had recently. And we'll have another one called air supply. So this will determine how much air we've got left when we're in a place where we can't breathe. And the last one will be hydration. Did I spell that right? Yes. Okay. To go along with this, we need a couple other small things. We're going to have another one called healing ability. This is how well you heal. And we want to know the last damage time, and this is going to be something we're going to set from world time when the last damage was received, and then we're going to keep track of another variable we're going to call elapsed time. So the elapsed time is going to keep track of how much time has gone by since this last damage time, and that's going to be important because we're going to create a little bit of a delay before we start healing your health. So if you take damage, you're not going to just instantly start healing. There's going to be a short delay, and then you'll start picking up some healing from your healing ability. So basically the way this is going to work is that when you take some kind of damage, or you get hurt, or you get poisoned, or whatever it may be, your health is going to be affected by that, but your healing ability is a factor that's going to start bringing that back. So let's start taking a look now at some of these factors and how we're going to model them to build up our game character to decide how this character can behave. Why am I getting a compile error here? There's no reason for that. Let me see here. Can't parse default value false for property elapsed time. Okay, I don't know why it thought it had a false in there. That's strange. So now it seems to be compiling. Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to show another feature in this that I do like to use from time to time. You'll see we've got these graphs up here, and the main one is this event graph. In the future, we're going to probably add some more capabilities to this, so I want more than just my main event graph. My main event graph will deal with some top level stuff possibly, but I want to create an additional graph in here, and I'm going to call this additional graph basic damage. And so this is where we're going to deal with game events related to damage coming into this character. Okay, and so this is going to be very straightforward. We want in here, we want begin play, event begin play. And on event begin play, what we're going to do is get this take any we also want to get the player pawn. And in this particular case, we don't even have to worry about casting it, because we can deal with it at the very highest level of abstraction. All player pawns will have this. And what we want is take any damage. And here it says assign on take any damage. That's the one we want, because what this is going to do on begin play is assign this engine level event called take any damage, and it's going to assign it to this on take any damage event. And I'm going to change this to player on take any damage player base is what I'm going to call it. So the way this assignment works, this binding works, is that when this event happens here, this is like a tie-in to that event. It's actually going to call this event on our very specialized health system, okay, rather than some generic stuff internally. All right. I think there's one other thing we ultimately need to do here, and I believe it's called handled. Take any damage. No, we don't have to do that. All right, I was thinking of something else. All right, so this is a little bit what we're going to do here for damage is we're going to ultimately affect our health, but we're going to have to take into account a variety of things. Now this on take any damage is something external, right? But it can also be something internal. It's actually anything that sends damage to the player character. If it's damaging the player character, then it will flow through this function. All right, and this is our damage value right here. And we're going to handle that internally here this way. We're going to take this damage. Well, actually, there's one other thing we want to do. We want to create a function first. This function is going to be called damage modifier. All right. I created a macro by mistake. Let me delete that. I want to create a function, damage modifier function. This is a fairly simple function. We're going to get our stats. So we need to add one other thing into here, and we're going to call this the stats. And this is going to be a stats component, and it's going to be an object reference. And you'll see that falls under components up here. And I'll show you how we're going to set that in the... so we'll get our stats. I'll show you how we're going to set that. We're going to actually set that in the stats, or in the possibly in the player character. We'll see. I'll show you how we're going to hook that up. But we need to connect. This component needs to be aware of the stats component. The stats component does not have to be aware of the health component, but we do have to have this. So from here, what we want to do is get stat total by ID, and I'm going to get 2 of these. And the first one we're going to be interested in is going to be our fortitude, and down here constitution. We got to hook this up so that it knows what object it's pulling it from. And I'm just going to take those 2, and this math gets a little bit funny, but I'm just going to add these 2 together, and that'll come up with a value based on our stats, those 2 stats, that's going to affect how we take damage. And then I'm going to just take this and multiply it, integer by integer, and I'm going to multiply it by 100. So this is just a, think of it like it's not really a constant because it can change. As you get points and you increase these 2 stats, you can take damage better against things. And we may change the way this formula works in the future. And then, so what I want to do is return that damage modifier. So my output is going to be a float. And we're just going to call it, come on, damage modifier. All right. And pull this over here, and all we got to do is take this and hook it up to there, and that converts it to an back to an integer, or back to a float rather. So these were integers, and we multiply it by 100, and what we get out is a float, which is what we want, because we're going to be using it with a float, with some float functions, so it's better to just convert it here. All right, let's go back to our basic damage graph. And we want to get that function, damage modifier, take it down here. Yeah, one other thing, let's go back to our damage modifier. We can make it a pure function, as all it's doing is extracting that stuff and returning it back. Stop that. Event graph, nope. Basic damage, yeah, that's what we want. All right, so now it is a pure function. We don't have to put it through the pipeline. All right, we're going to take this damage that's being done to our character here and divide it, float divided by float, divide it by this damage modifier. And then we want to get our health here. Get the health and subtract this damage from our health. And then we want to set it, take our health again, and go ahead and put it here, and that'll create a setter. And we can do that. Clamp between 0 and 1. But when we set this, we want to make sure, I forgot one thing, we're going to do a clamp float. And we're just going to make sure that it always stays between 0 and 1 when we set the health. So if it did a lot of damage, it'll just take it to 0. If it did some sort of negative damage, it won't push it over 1. Why we would do negative damage, I don't know. But Then what we're going to do is, well, we're going to eventually have like a death animation of some sort. In fact, we could set that up. But for now, we're just going to destroy the actor when our health hits 0. So after setting that, we also want to set this last damage time. And what we want to set that to is get game time in seconds. So we want to get game time in seconds. That's the one we want, and we just want to set that. So we took damage, and this is the time set for when we took damage. Finally, we're going to come out of here from our health, and we're just going to say it should never be less than or equal to 0. It should never be less than 0, but I don't like to do floating point equals, so I'm going to say less than or equal to 0. We're going to have a condition come off of this, a branch. And if in fact our health is less than or equal to 0, what we're going to do is come off of here and go destroy actor, destroy tracker. We'll do a get player pawn. We'll type in destroy actor, and we'll hook this up. So that'll be, for now, we'll just destroy the actor, and that will end the game. You'll be dead. In another way, we could respawn the actor back to some point, but that's what we'll do for now as a temporary. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do this just a little bit different. Instead of doing all of this right here, I'm going to create a macro. And its input, it's going to have an execute input. And this is going to be called, we'll call this life. And it's going to have another execute input that we're going to call death. And its output is just going to be, actually, it doesn't need an output. Or yes, it does. We'll just call it life. It's an execute output of life. So if it's life, it goes to there. We'll call it life continue. CONTINUE, continue life. And this one down here will be, we'll do a get player pawn. We'll do a, actually, we'll call this just exec. And we'll get rid of this one. How do you get rid of these? There it is. Get rid of this one. And this will just be complete exec output. Actually, okay. As another input, I'm kind of winging it here. I don't have notes on this, so we'll type in health, and we'll make this a float, and we'll make a we'll make this live. We'll create another output we'll call dead. And we'll go here, and we'll go, actually we'll go here. We'll go less than or equal to 0. We'll go branch. We'll take this into the branch. If it is in fact less than, if health is less than or equal to 0, we're going to go to, this was supposed to be exec. We'll go to dead, and we'll go to live, and we don't need this. So that little macro gives us a simple exec in with a health and an exec out, live or dead, live or dead. Okay. Basic damage. So instead of doing this, we're moving that decision, and we're going to go get that macro. Let's rename it to macro. I'm going to call it check life. All right, so we'll come in here and we'll do check life. We'll bring the exec in. We'll bring the health in, and if we live, for now we'll do that. We die. We'll do that. Okay. There's our first part of our health structure. Okay, there you go. We got our health component started. We've got basic variables to track and some algorithms for handling damage. Yeah, in the next videos here, we will do more with the health and the HUD and various other things. So thanks for watching. If you like that video, hit the like button. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to get notifications when I upload videos, hit that notify button. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.